Hi again, everyone. I'm Ollie Matthews. This is Refuge from Narcissism. And this refugee video is sponsored by contribution from Hugo's son. And this is a follow-up to Narcissistic Parents Always Make You the Scapegoat. And here is his story. Hey, it's Hugo's son again. I have a lot to say. A lot has happened, especially since I discovered narcissism in your channel around the age of 18. That said, I want to describe some of my childhood and teenage experiences first. You were right when you said I have had a lifetime of fighting. I would like to flesh out some things. I mentioned in my previous email my family is from the former Yugoslavia. The former Yugoslavia had a number of different ethnic groups. Some of these ethnic groups were Muslim. My family is Muslim. No one really follows the tenets of the religion except my grandmother, who prays 5 times a day. I don't think my parents are true Muslims. My mother is very spiritual, while my father is a very pragmatic person without a hint of superstition. This goes so far that he doesn't even like watching any TV or drama to do with fantasy. My mother is the polar opposite, indulging in almost childish TV series and movies. My father told me at a young age that it was a good thing to believe in God, even if I wasn't religious. I started espousing atheism at a young age, around my early teens, and I was open about it to my father. Despite my father not following the tenets of the religion, he made sure that we participated in all the religious holidays, such as, Eid al-Mubarak and Eid al-Fitr. This involved visiting friends and relatives. Men and boys go to dine at each other's household, while women stay at home and wait on the guests. It's more to do with keeping face and tradition than anything to do with religion, as no one really follows the tenets of the religion day to day. One thing my parents insisted on was not eating pork. I find this absurd looking back now, as they would drink and get drunk at New Year's Eve and other occasions. And that was halal, so to speak. There is a lot of drinking in my extended family, though my parents don't drink regularly, nor are they alcoholics. My paternal uncle might be an alcoholic, however. He drinks regularly. Eating a bacon cheeseburger with my friends at McDonald's was, of course, strictly forbidden. Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, if you're gonna make your kids follow the religion, then you better be following it yourself. If you're gonna deny your children bacon or pork or like a bacon cheeseburger, okay, and then go get fucking shit-faced on New Year's Eve, you're a fucking hypocrite. Both my parents grew up in big families. On my father's side, he grew up with 3 older sisters and a younger brother in a tiny house above a shop, not different to the one I grew up in here in London, just in Yugoslavia. Around when my father was born, he had a brother die. He died at 9 years old. My father was 3 at the time. My family tells me he was hit by a car. My paternal uncle is named after him. Before any children were born, I believe there was another child who died via carbon monoxide poisoning. I don't know much about her, so my father has 2 dead siblings, which isn't surprising growing up in communist bloc of Yugoslavia. Child mortality rates were off the fucking charts. That's what it's like living under communism. My paternal grandmother, my father's mother, was a big part of my life. She babysat my sister, and while my parents were working, she would pick us up from school, feed us, clothe us, and so on until my parents got back from work. She would also take us to the park after school. My parents were often working long hours during those early days. My parents are cleaners. They have 4 or 5 wealthy clients whose houses they clean and look after on a regular basis. They have been pretty much doing the same thing since they arrived here 22 years ago. Well, it's not much different in England than it is here. Okay, the wealthy use the immigrants to clean their houses and do what they do. When asked why they didn't try for any further education, they simply say it was because they had to look after my sister and I and therefore had to work long hours. This was true when they first arrived, but stopped being true once they became settled and worked reasonable hours. So here's another one of my childhood stories. I was 6 in the apartment above the shop again. My father's sister had come to visit from abroad. That day I had been with my father to the swimming pool. I slipped and fell on the tiles near poolside. I fell and hit the back of my head quite badly. Anytime I got hurt, not only did I have to deal with the injury, but I also had to deal with being shouted at and even being hit by my parents. Accidents were always my fault because I was being careless, so I would get punished for that as well. The more serious the injury, the more careless I had been, so the more I deserved to be punished. One of the lifeguards there suggested that my father that I go to the hospital and check if I had a concussion. I knew I was in trouble now. The entire way to the hospital, my father berated me about how it was my fault he was stuck in traffic, and my fault we were waiting for 4 hours in the hospital waiting room. As an adult, I am terrified to make mistakes and compulsively mull over mistakes I could make or have made in the past. This obsessive compulsion is still with me today, and I'm terrified of making mistakes, and this is how your father broke you. Terrified to make any error, terrified to make a mistake because you're going to be beaten, you're going to be fucking objectified, you're going to be called names, you're going to be blamed for everything, you're going to be fucking berated for every second that you're having to deal with that injury or deal with that mistake. And you become numb and you become terrified to do anything. And you find it's easier to get berated for doing nothing than for doing the wrong thing. Another reason why so many of us sit in neutral or sit just idling, terrified to make a mistake, because the consequences are worse for doing nothing than for trying to do something. Whether it's an injury or a mistake you make in your career or in school, whatever it is. God forbid it's a mistake or an injury you receive trying to better yourself, trying to do something, because they're going to look at that like you think you're better than me. When we got home, it was late in the evening, around 12 o'clock at night. There was a huge amount of shouting. I often woke up to this type of shouting. I was in bed with my aunt who was visiting. I tried my best to dig my head into the pillow and block out the noise. The louder the screaming got, the tighter I wrapped the pillow around my head. From what I could make out, my father, mother, uncle, aunt, and grandmother were arguing over something. "Just throw him out," I heard my aunt say. My aunt, father, mother, and grandmother would take turns coming into our bedrooms to console us. My father would smile as he came into the bedroom, as if he had not been screaming 20 minutes earlier. It was almost as if they had some rotation going. Luckily, everything was okay with my head. I didn't have any memory issues. The next day, I asked my mother where my uncle was. I heard her tossing out his clothes from the bay window the night before at my aunt's request. She said my uncle was gone. I asked why. "Because he threatened to kill your father. Now shut up." I started to cry. Sincerely yours, Hugo's son. Well, if your father could just throw out his own brother or his own family, okay, how does that make you feel your status is in the family? After he berates you, yells at you, screams at you for every fucking mistake you ever make. Okay? And then you come home and you watch him just toss your fucking brother out. Of course, you're going to go through life thinking that you're next. it'd just be that easy to discard you. That's why. That's why you have fear of moving, you have fear of doing anything, because the consequences are less severe to do nothing than if you make a mistake or injure yourself, God forbid, trying to do something for yourself. And the lesson you learned real early on is you'll be discarded next. It is what it is. So I hope that helps. Thank you for another contribution and story, Yugo-san. I really appreciate it. Thank you to everybody watching. Please leave any opinions or advice in the comment section below. And again, if you want your story read on the channel, you have a topic you'd like me to cover, something you'd like me to expose, you'd like to set up a Skype phone call, have a private video made, you'd like to sponsor a video like this for someone who needs help and can't afford it, or you'd just like to make a contribution to the channel in general to keep it supported, growing, and successful, because this channel survives 100% on contributions from all of you. Without you guys, all this goes away. So if you like what you see here and you want to see more videos like this, you know what to do with the PayPal and email links in the description box. Also, please like and share this video wherever you can. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't, and be sure to click the subscription bell to be notified of all my video uploads. I'm Ollie Matthews. This has been Refuge from Narcissism.